This is like apocalyptic kind of stuff going on in the Panhandle. George is like in the middle of a blizzard. I can't believe it. We're still going to do Florida State Seminoles live because he's a gamer. But man, I just can't imagine. A lot of Floridians are probably thinking the world's coming to an end. All right. Leave the comments and questions there in the chat. We do Florida State football talk with you every Wednesday at 6 p.m. Eastern time. Are you going to buy yourself a shovel, George?
Well, we got a shovel at the house, but not one, not a snow shovel.
Yes.
I don't think we're planning on this happening like again.
Yeah.
Probably in the next 100 years. I was telling you off air, the record was 5 inches back in 1895, and it was 6 to 10 inches depending on where you are in kind of the area I live in, Pensacola and Milton. It got up to about 34 today and melted down a ton, and there's still 5 inches out on it. Like it's kind of snowman weather now because it's melted a little bit and you can actually make snowballs out of it. It was like just, fresh powder, whatever they talk about when it's super fluffy. That's how the snow was. It wasn't a sleet or anything. I think it worked out. Knock on wood, we never lost power because of how fluffy the snow was. It didn't freeze up the power lines or get stuck. It kind of just all came to the ground. It was like being a kid again. There's very few things as you get up in age that you're experiencing for the first time, and this is one of those. I guarantee you a ton of people around here. Haven't heard of any big traffic accidents or anything crazy so far, so it's been pretty cool. Yeah.
That's
snowing in Florida, the first ever blizzard in the Gulf of Mexico.
Yeah, because like I told you with social media and so forth, and I don't keep up with the weather. I'm not a big weather guy, and aside from hurricanes, I have less reason to be a weather guy these days, living in the Sunshine State. But I'm far enough south that it's just a little frosty here, just a little like high 40s here, but and a ton of rain last night, But and I saw a couple weather patterns that showed I was going to come across the country, but then it was kind of dipping into the Gulf and then swooping up. And I thought, they'll probably get a dusting, and some people will get to see some things they haven't seen. But I didn't even realize from your pictures. I thought your pictures were just maybe like a coat of snow, like maybe 2 inches over everything that make it look like everything's just wiped out. But man, I had no idea until we got on here that some people were digging through 10 inches. That's funny.
Yeah, it's like a movie. Hard to believe. That's what I kept saying. I'll believe it when I see it because we've got a half inch, an inch, every 10 years, little flurries, but nothing like this. No, it was driving snow for 10, 12 hours straight, getting about an inch an hour, when it was at its peak.
I lived in Mississippi for 7 years, which is obviously quite a bit north, and in North Mississippi, quite a bit north of you guys. So I'm sure they got pounded. I know that talked to somebody in Alabama, they did. I was in Mississippi for 7 years, and the one time that they said, and people were freaking out about snow coming, I woke up the next morning and I looked outside. There wasn't a flake of snow on the ground, and there were like 2 flying, like I could see swirling in the wind. I went to church that morning and they were telling people, thank you for coming out, braving the roads. And I was like, well, there was nothing out there. But anyway, that's crazy. That is crazy. Well, where else there was some snow, George, was I turned on the Eagles-Rams game on Sunday, and I saw posted on social media, Mike Norvell attended the game because there were 5 former Florida State players in the game. And I used to be like as big an NFL fan as you could find, like knew everybody's rosters, everything. I'm not anymore. So it was kind of unusual here in the last 5 years for me to get into an NFL playoff game, but it was a pretty good game. And then they got a ton of snow in the second half. This field was covered with snow. And I found out that guy like Braden Fisk is having a hell of a year. He's got like 8 sacks. So he's had a great year. Former Florida State, of course, a rookie. And then Jared Verse just completely was a wrecking crew on that NFL playoff game as well.
And it sure goes to show you how underrated that FSU D line was last year. You spoke. Braden Fisk has been an absolute stud all year for them. Ton of pressures, 8 sacks, played all over the field. And then Jared Verse, Pro Bowl, just announced Defensive Rookie of the Year officially. Like everybody kind of knew it. The dude led the NFL in pressures, not led rookies. He led the NFL in pressures in the regular season and the postseason up until now, which he's out. So I guess technically somebody could pass him if they've got more games to play. But he led the playoffs and the regular season as a rookie. And that's not that's not a skill position to where you could just break out with your athleticism year one. He's pushing some of the best offensive tackles in the league straight into quarterbacks, just like he was doing to Florida, Clemson, and everybody else when he was at Florida State. It's pretty striking. And then Braden Fisk, the same thing. He was coming off a shoulder injury the first half of 23, which is why he kind of came on slow, rebuilding that strength in the first half of the year. But looking back on those defensive performances, it makes it that much worse not being able to wonder, man, I wonder if we could have stonewalled Michigan or Washington or whoever it may have been in that playoff. But yeah, for Mike Norvell to go out there and see the multiple guys he's coached, Josh Sweat, obviously on Philadelphia. I'm blanking on the other two players that Philly has right now.
Yeah, I didn't mean to put you on the spot, but
I'm right there with you on the NFL knowledge. It's extremely lacking on, especially this year, following it as much as I used to.
Yeah. So anybody there in the chat, if you want to let us know who may else have been in that game. Again, those are the two guys I was aware of. I didn't know about Josh Sweat, and I saw a video again on social media of Mike Norvell on the sidelines, and hugging and greeting those guys. And I thought that was kind of cool that he flew up to Philadelphia to watch the game.
Oh yeah, love seeing it. He's been all over the place. He's been flying and visiting folks. He was right here. I'm about a mile from Milton High School. He was here a couple of times last week. I think he came to see Caden Hall, the number 2 safety in the nation. Big time player at Milton High. So yeah, he's from Milton to Miami to Texas to California. Him, Herb Hand, Tony White, these guys, you really see the difference kind of in who's getting offered. All of a sudden, all these 6'7", 300 guys love FSU and are in it for him. Chasen Brown, they went and saw him again. Mike Norvell went to see him. The 6'7", 260-pound offensive tackle. He still looks like he's going to be a commit. I think he's just probably going to want to commit on the National Signing Day. But yeah, they're continuing to push.
George, I either saw it from you. I apologize if it wasn't you. It was somebody within your Florida State community there, whether it was you or Jen or Chris Frazier. Somebody posted something derogatory about Alex Adkins that was pretty obvious, just in terms of a recruiting type of jab. So what's the story about Alex Adkins in regards to him not exactly having a fire under him in regards to recruiting?
Well, you make it sound so bad when you say derogatory. No, It was definitely me. It was just an observation. I said this on my show last night. I'm not real good at I'm not one of these people that sits around okay, what's a trend? What's something that happened? Let me put a good joke to it, or let me think out a tweet or make a meme on Canva that I can put out there that'll go viral. I just kind of put my thoughts out there. If I have a thought, if something occurs to me, if I have an epiphany while I'm scrolling the timeline, I'll tweet it out. And that's kind of what it was. What I just said a moment ago, Alex Atkins would be after a couple blue chips and another 2 or 3 or 5 guys each year. And those would be the only guys he would recruit. You wouldn't hardly offer anybody. And then if you missed on one of them, you're screwed. That's it. You're stuck with a guy that has no business at Florida State. Damn sure not as the top 1 or 2 or 3 offensive line in the class. And all of a sudden, and never anybody over 6'3", 6'4", 200 some pounds and some change, except for very rarely. And there's not a ton of 6'7", 6'8" offensive tackles out there. There's just not a bunch of them, period. So, I don't think we kind of realized it at the time, or I didn't, or I was willfully blind to it. But now all of a sudden, as soon as Herb Hand gets here, get 4 guys out of the portal better than anything you ever got in the portal in 6 seasons, 5 years. All of a sudden the high school guys you're getting these offers out to that are retweeting and immediately putting you in their top schools and saying what an honor it is and how amazing it is to be at Florida State. And I keep talking about Chasen Brown. Like, was Atkins recruiting him? He's 6'7", 260, and he's right here in Florida. Like, he was ready to go to UCF. Yeah, the tweet was like, holy crap. Alex Atkins just literally wasn't recruiting these guys. It's like he wanted to be friends with 4 or 5 of them and like was scared you couldn't offer somebody else because it would hurt their feelings. I'm not sure. I don't want to go down the rabbit hole, and this is all allegedly. I don't want to get sued for defamation or whatever, but there was some dynamics going in there and some ego surrounding Alex Atkins and some other kind of members of that coaching staff that, ultimately FSU ended up paying the price for with who they decided to keep and who they were worried about placating and the recruiting out of high school. It seems like a stark difference all of a sudden once Herb Hand and Gus Malzahn got here. You only hope that there's kind of, they can win enough games to see it through to year 2 and year 3 and make a run with this thing. But it sure just seems completely different. All of a sudden, you've signed and offered and got commits for more 6-foot guys over 6'5" than you did 5 whole years.
Yeah, George Itis here from the Renegade Report. Of course, join him every Tuesday and Friday night, 7:30 Eastern, over on his channel, breaking down Florida State football and everything else that's fun surrounding college football, ACC related, but FSU first and foremost, of course. I'm looking at these transfer portal additions for Florida State. If you could pin down one guy that you think is the best addition, is going to be the most impactful, who would that be?
That's tough, man. I said it all along, and it was kind of split. We had the conversation here on the show before it even committed. It just seemed like the slam dunk guy was Thomas Castellanos to come run this offense. I think in order to put together the portal class that you did, like the kind of, the spoon that stirs the drink, it was Thomas Castellanos. He was the most important one. They got him in there immediately, and then they could start selling to these offensive linemen. They made that immediately the priority. That's what they went after hard early in the portal. They got their 4 offensive linemen, and all of a sudden you can sell to the wide receivers and the different guys that they ended up getting. You end up getting a couple linebackers, 4 or 5, I think 5 different defensive linemen. Thomas Castellanos, he's probably the top, the most important. As far as who you're going to rate as being maybe the biggest overall, just on a straight up, it's hard not to say Micah Pettis just because of how much of a need you have on offensive linemen. On the defensive side, James Williams is the most exciting pickup, I'd have to say, out of the bunch on that side. But so, Deontay McCray is another good one. Out of high school, one name comes to mind. That's Kevin Wynn. He's going to be really, really exciting. But we talked about this on the show as you've got the list up there. Micah Pettis, Adrian Medley, Luke Pettibone, and I left somebody out, but the 4 offensive linemen they brought in, Gunnar Hansen, the other tackle. 4 offensive linemen they brought in. They need these guys to start and play every single game. We've had, I think we had 9 or 10 different combinations, starting offensive line combinations last year going into like week 10. I don't know if they stopped rotating after they fired Atkins or what the deal is, but they need consistency there. The offensive line is probably the biggest turnaround, the best group they signed by a good bit. But again, the defensive line as well. I mean, Diamante Diggs, James Williams, Jason Jenkins. It sounded a good group of guys.
George, I said it at the time, and hopefully it plays out for you, that I think you're going to be pleasantly surprised with Deuce Robinson. I think I know that his numbers were not spectacular this past year, but every time I watched him play, and I see a lot of USC football, quite a bit, for not being a USC guy, and he's just he's a matchup nightmare. He's got excellent hands. I think he's going to be really good for FSU.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, if you're looking at potential and like, where you'd rank them as far as what their potential future draft prospects are, Deuce Robinson is probably the top guy on that list. He's got everything. Third year guy, I believe, just came off 395 yards and 5 touchdowns, something like that at USC. Yeah, between him and Squirrel White, if they can block it up and get Thomas Castellanos some time, they both have potential to be major impacts in the offense. And, to go along with Jordan Scott, the JUCO guy that's 6'7", ended up taking Johnny Wilson's number 14 number. Malzahn he really flipped the kind of room and the body types that he needs. You got some big trees out there to do some blocking for the sprint screen and run game. Got your offensive lineman. It's again, like anytime I mention going back to that Alex Atkins tweet, people are like, oh, that's really on the head coach. Everything falls on him and you ought to be criticizing him. It's like, yeah, I did. I criticized him. We went 2-10. When we're talking about these things being good additions and giving FSU a chance, I'm not sitting here saying it's going to be a playoff team or giving Mike a pass. But, we talked about it ad nauseum for 3 months. We criticized everything, how we got here, et cetera. Since he fired the 6 guys or, demoted one, not even demoted, Odell moved on to another position. You get rid of 5 guys and you bring in 6 new guys. Ever since those moves have been made, he's knocked it out of the park. All that's left to do is for him to win. And it's going to be fun talking about, and it's going to be worse than other seasons because we won't even get to see a preview of the spring. We're just going to get kind of reports outside of tour duty, which just started now in spring practice. But they're going to debut this new offense and defense, August 30th against Alabama. Currently a 1 touchdown dog in that game, that home game against Alabama. Vegas odds recently updated. They have us in the top 20 of national championship odds, which I don't know if that's smart or stupid. They had us ACC title favorites last year, and we all saw how that turned out. But, when I talk to people, take my opinion out of it, what I think, and, my knowledge of the roster and everything. The way these things work usually regress somewhere to the mean. So, it's just statistically 2 and 3 or 4 wins are just unlikely this year, guys. So if it happens, I'll be standing on my chair to say it's time to get rid of Mike Norvell and move on to the next. But I think FSU fans are going to be pleasantly surprised with what they get, especially if those 4 offensive linemen can start all year. Thomas Castellanos can stay healthy. Even if you just win 7 games or maybe you're pushing for 8, something like that is going to be miles better than what we had last year. And maybe you can get some momentum like a Michigan or Florida at the end of the year this year and really push for something, a special 26 class. Because that's the thing. If they can win, if they can get this thing pointed in the right direction, this staff is going to be able to sign one hell of a 26 class and maybe you could get something going.
Jackson, we appreciate you being there in the chat, as always, sir. You're the man. And Jackson reminding everyone, Disputed National Champions is the book. Florida State fans, you especially will enjoy this book as we slice and dice the 1990s season by season. And it's different than any other book you will read about the 1990s in particular. There's a reason I chose the 90s. Check it out. And it's not just a historical book. We take all those results of each season and we fast forward them into the BCS, the 4-team, 12-team, and 14-team possible college football playoff eras. George, when you get a chance, I got 2 guys I'd like to hit you up on from the portal class going out that I'm just curious about. So Deuce Spann could light it up in terms of a 40-yard dash and was kind of a kick return guy. But he came in from Illinois, and I remember seeing him just, he'd catch his 14 passes a year. It wasn't a whole lot of production, but most of it was just taking guys deep and catching some big balls for the Illini. But it never seemed to turn out for him, which I could understand when they had the Keon Colemans and the Johnny Wilsons of the world clogging up the depth chart. But this past season, Deuce Spann not getting a lot of playing time or being a main target. Any thoughts about how things went for him at FSU?
Yeah, I think he was just a victim of the terrible season. He's one of these guys. He was just a raw guy. To your point, coming out of Illinois, all the athleticism in the world. They got him the ball any way they could in 23, and probably would have continued to in 24 if things hadn't went so terribly. Just as far as like being a wide receiver that you know is can hit all the routes on the route tree and be right where he needs to be, find the hole in zone coverage, get that one catch on third down for a DJU, whoever's in there. It was just going to be tough for him. So you wish him the best. I just don't think, I don't think Ron Dugans and the previous coaching staff really did a service for him. But it's not egregious. I don't think he was, done egregiously wrong, mishandled or anything like that. The situation just didn't work out. He could have been a good gadget guy. Would have liked to have seen what Gus Malzahn could have done with him. But I think maybe just he goes somewhere where he thinks he can be a bigger part of the plan and the top guys. When you look at the big wide receiver class we signed the year before, continued, going to attack the portal this year with Squirrel. It's just he was going to be a third or a fourth option any way you cut it, and that's kind of why I left.
Luke Kromenhoek. Okay, he goes to Mississippi State. He's going to be coached by Jeff Lebby, who knows offense, knows how to work with quarterbacks, knows how to call plays, really good at that, although it's right now the worst team in the SEC, or at least they were last year. I see him extremely high on these transfer portal lists for quarterbacks. I didn't see much of him. Of course, he got his time late in the season. How good do you think Luke Kromenhoek can be?
Maybe he could be really good maybe 2 or 3 years down the road. Maybe he shocks me and he's great this year. But yeah, he's one of these guys. It's the new era. If you come in and you're not in line to start as a redshirt freshman or, a true sophomore, whatever the case may be, all of a sudden you've got a choice to make. Do you do it the old school way and sit there and grind it out and try to earn a starting position? Or do you now all of a sudden get to be a free agent with a little bit of film out there and get, $1 million or $2 million from another college to go be the backup? But, it's tough. It's hard to blame him because you did change coordinators and things of that nature. But yeah, do I think he's he should have been the number 2 player in the entire transfer portal? Hell no. Or the second quarterback or whatever it was. I just think the potential's there, but you got sacked on a quarter of your dropbacks. Is the line terrible? Yeah, but the other 2 quarterbacks that played was like a fraction of that percent. So I don't know, man. I really liked him. I thought he had like Josh Allen type attributes, a big, tall guy that can run around, is tough, the whole gamer mentality, but has an NFL type arm. I like some of that stuff. I think his confidence got shaken early when his first game makes 3 dart throws that get dropped. Like that all would have been touchdowns. And, it was a tough position to be in. But yeah, what are you going to do? You had to bring in Thomas Castellanos. I don't really know how great Sperry will be. You got Trevor Jackson. Our guy, I'm blanking on his name, but our other backup quarterback has surprised me, and he's stayed. So Florida State will be all right. You hate to see him go, but yeah, I don't see him being Johnny Manziel at Mississippi State in 2025. And their starter returned, who's also a freshman. So I don't is he even going to start? I don't know. We'll see what happens out there. Jeff Lebby's definitely a good coach, but Mississippi State, man, that's a tough place. You got the Sylvester Croom era, and when he played, and then the coaching thing, the 30 for 30. That's a really interesting time over there, if I'm not mistaken. And then you've got Dan Mullen, but outside of that, tough sledding over there, especially in this new age. They decided to spend some money. It just seems to me, and I didn't look over their whole class, but putting your eggs in the basket of players like that is what Florida State did in 2024. Learned from their lesson and got back to what they did before and getting guys with proven experience and upperclassmen in the portal. I think that's the way to go. So good luck to them. Nothing against them. it's a lot of projection. You're basically taking a high school player again.
The only time I saw Mississippi State this past year was in the Egg Bowl against Ole Miss, and Michael Van Buren did play well. He was pretty impressive. They hung in that game because of him partially, and so we'll see what happens there. All right, on to 2026, and anything to update us on in regards to the recruiting efforts?
No names in particular, but they're just on everybody. The 2 junior days, they had the first junior day on the 18th, have another one this Friday on the 25th. I mean, anybody who's anybody, if you look up the top 300 or whatever of the 26 class, they're either here last weekend or they're going to be here this next weekend. Number one, DN, D-line, offensive tackle. They're getting everybody in town. It's going to be very interesting to see who they get any commits early on or how it goes. But yeah, they already got the number one quarterback in the country committed. 4 or 5 different guys from the state of Florida. They were the number one class for a while. It's dropped down. I think they're still top 10, something like that. But they continue to recruit. They are the way they are now, and if they can, win some games this year, they're going to have a damn good recruiting class for sure. They've got it pushed to another level. One of the recruiting, the assistant coaches now can travel and recruit as well. So you have 11 people who can go out and recruit. To be able to send Ernie Sims out to recruit for you is pretty cool. You can still send Odell out from time to time. I don't know. Pretty neat stuff, and they're maximizing their opportunities. The word on the street is the coffers have definitely came open, and NIL opportunities and bags getting dropped and things of that nature. They're not going to get beat out much on those things. Still hoping to be in it for Zahir Mathis, Ty Haywood, Chasen Brown. Like I said, those 2025 guys. 2026 class, there's not any particular names that come to mind or like at this point in time. It's just literally after everybody. I mentioned Caden Hall just because I personally want him as a person from Milton High's graduate that I'd like to see him go to Florida State. But yeah, just stay tuned. There's a lot of hype coming out of Tallahassee. We'll see if any commits come this early or not. But yeah, they're definitely on the road. Herb hands, in people's kitchens, making omelets and things for offensive tackles, families. It's fun to see.
Do you have any particular ties to Milton, or you're just saying that because it's right across the Panhandle, just inside of Georgia, right?
No. Milton, Florida, where I live.
Milton, Florida. Okay. I know there's a Milton, Georgia. Okay. I thought maybe you were talking about Milton, Georgia. You're there in Milton, Florida. Okay, I'm going to have to look that up on a map.
Oh, you're going to have to, because I'm going to have to drop some names. Yeah, Caden Hall, like I was talking about, the number 2 safety in the nation's here, but a lot of pro athletes out of Florida, Milton, Florida here. We had 3 golfers in the top 20 at one point in time with Heath Slocum, Bubba Watson, and Boo Weekly, all here at the same time. You've got Elijah Williams, played in NFL, Cortland Finnegan, Lawrence Tynes, obviously Greg Allen, crazy legs at Florida State. I'm probably leaving some off, but pretty crazy amount of pro athletes that have came out of Milton throughout the years. They were, they won, I think, the state title in like 78, 79. They were a powerhouse back then. Had some really good teams, the early 2000s. Those are ones with Bruce Hall, Cortland Finnegan, Lawrence Tynes, those guys. But then it kind of dropped off. By the time I got there, things had fallen apart. But like anything else, you split things up. All of a sudden, Pace High got a lot bigger. Kids started going wherever the hot program was and just kind of moving around to pulling for Milton to do something. But yeah, definitely a connection there for sure.
We're doing our Miami football show at 7 o'clock Eastern time on the Canes channel, so check us out there in just a few minutes. And again, it's a Friday night with George, and again, come around to the next Tuesday, but the next show is Friday night at is it 7 or 7:30? I put 7 on the banner at some
That's
point.
right. 7 Eastern.
7 o'clock Eastern.
We're running late, which happens as well.
All right. Do you have any idea what's on tap for Friday?
This is the junior day, so we're going to get more into this and kind of find out who the staff's focusing on, maybe have like a top 10 targets for the 2026 class. I'm hoping something breaks free in this ACC ESPN extension drama that's coming up, February 1st deadline. Chris is doing a show. He's going to talk about it tonight. So, yeah, I would love to talk about that if something breaks free or we get some information on that, but that's still in the air. But, yeah, just getting into just pretty much a lot of conversational stuff and previewing what's to come. It's going to be a long wait till August 30th till we get to see what this team looks like. It's exciting times, but yeah.
All right, George. We appreciate you being here as always, holding down the Wednesday night slot for us. And before you know it, it's going to be 80 and humid.
Yeah, next week, I'm sure.
So, all right, George, appreciate you, and have a great week. And we'll catch everybody back here next Wednesday with George on FSU Live right here at the Voice of College Football.